The Strait of Hormuz has always been a high-stakes geopolitical chessboard, a narrow artery where the lifeblood of the global economy flows. But what transpired on April 18th was not a standard diplomatic standoff. Welcome to In Life. If you have been following our deep dives into global current events, you know that we track the intricate dance of international relations and the hidden mechanisms that keep our world turning. Today, we are looking at a maritime breakout from the Persian Gulf that defies almost all conventional logic. To say that this is the craziest situation we have observed in the Strait of Hormuz would be an understatement. The events that unfolded over this particular 24-hour window were, to borrow a phrase quite applicable to the specific area of the globe, completely and utterly batshit crazy. The atmosphere surrounding this incident was chaotic, perfectly mirroring a cartoonish escapade where nothing behaves as it should. The reality of the situation changed by the minute, with various factions and observers casting their own viewpoints to match the exact moment in time that fit their preferred narrative. As we break down the evidence for you, listeners of In Life, we want you to determine for yourself what exactly is going on and, more importantly, learn to differentiate the hard reality of maritime logistics from the noise of social media and mainstream news. To truly grasp the magnitude of what occurred on April 18th, we must first orient ourselves to the geography and the established rules of the Strait of Hormuz. When looking at a maritime map of this region, you will see designated zones known as internationally recognized traffic separation schemes. These act as the highways of the sea. The inbound lane situated to the north allows vessels coming from the Gulf of Oman to safely navigate the treacherous waters. Ships entering through this northbound lane follow a specific arc around the northern tip of Oman, passing just south of Iran before continuing into the Persian Gulf. Conversely, vessels looking to exit the region take the southbound lane, utilizing a southern route to make their outbound passage. When navigating these specific routes, ships inevitably sail through sections of Iranian territorial waters and Omani territorial waters. Under normal circumstances, this is not an issue. The United Nations Convention on the Law of the Seas provides a fundamental protection known as transit passage. Specifically, under Articles 34, 37, and several related provisions, international vessels are granted the legal right to transit through the territorial waters of sovereign nations in order to access other countries further up the Persian Gulf. This legal framework is the foundation of global trade in the region, ensuring that nations without direct access to the open ocean, such as Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and Iraq, can still participate in the global economy. However, the foundation of this international maritime law was actively being dismantled. Iran began actively changing the rules of the game by establishing a system that functioned much like an unapproved toll lane. Iranian authorities effectively declared the internationally recognized traffic separation schemes as dangerous areas, alluding to the presence of naval mines in those waters. In their place, Iran created entirely new shipping lanes that forced vessels exclusively deep into Iranian territorial waters. The newly mandated inbound lane was pushed tightly between Keshem Island, referred to as Kesham, and Larak Island, a small round landmass situated ominously between the old traffic separation schemes. The new outbound lane was redirected just south of Larak Island, hovering narrowly above the original, now abandoned, traffic lanes. By controlling this specific choke point, Iran effectively set up a geopolitical toll booth, leading to widespread allegations that they were charging illicit fees for vessels attempting to pass through. While nautical charts indicate there is sufficient water depth, measured in meters, to successfully navigate north of Oman and south of the old traffic lanes, the overriding fear of hidden sea mines kept most conventional traffic paralyzed. The spark that ignited the chaos of April 17th and 18th was a deeply confusing sequence of mixed signals from the highest levels of international leadership. It began when both President Donald Trump and the Iranian foreign minister issued public statements declaring that the passage for all commercial vessels through the Strait of Hormuz was now completely open for the remainder of a localized ceasefire. To a massive fleet of ships trapped behind an invisible wall of geopolitical tension, this sounded like the starting gun for a massive exodus. But the reality on the water was clouded by the looming presence of a U.S. blockade positioned further out in the Gulf of Oman and the northern Arabian Sea. The broader shipping industry immediately pushed back on this optimistic narrative, warning their captains that severe risks persisted despite the political rhetoric. Their skepticism was immediately validated when it was revealed that simply heading for the strait was not enough. Iran was requiring strict coordination with the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps for any transit. The IRGC began attaching complex political provisions to this passage, demanding concessions such as the unfreezing of Iranian financial funds. So while the diplomatic arm of the Iranian government proclaimed the strait open, the military arm was telling the world's shipping fleets to hold their position. Adding to this incredibly volatile and confusing mess is the simple yet infuriating reality of time zones. The northern part of the strait, governed by Iran, operates on a time zone of UTC plus 3.5 hours, while the southern part, governed by Oman, operates on UTC plus 4 hours. In an environment where split-second decisions dictate the safety of multi-million-dollar vessels and their crews, this deliberate lack of simplicity only amplified the danger. As the clock struck 1200 UTC on April 17, the tension finally snapped. Empowered by the public declarations that the strait was open, the first contestant in this dangerous race made its move, the Celestial Discovery. She is a 23-year-old passenger ship flying the flag of Malta, weighing in at roughly 42,000 gross tons. Operated by Celestial Lines, a small Greek-owned cruise company, she was one of about half a dozen cruise ships that had become trapped in the Persian Gulf during the standoff. The Celestial Discovery committed to the southern route, bolting for the exit in a desperate bid to escape. Her movement acted as a catalyst. Suddenly, a massive batch of green cargo ships and red tankers, which had been holding at massive anchorages near the UAE-Oman border, throttled up their engines and pointed their bows toward the Strait of Hormuz. But as the regular commercial fleet approached the invisible line in the water, a chilling realization seemed to wash over them, and they simply stopped. They refused to push through. Massive container ships like the CGM Everglade, operated by one of the world's largest container liners, held their position, opting for caution despite the fact that a sister ship had recently managed to negotiate a deal with Iran to escape. The freighters froze, but a different breed of ship decided to test the waters. A row of tankers began maneuvering into position, preparing to make a daring run for the open ocean. The breakout was not led by the standard, well-regulated commercial fleet. It was led by a vessel called the Torin. The Torin is a 21-year-old oil and chemical product tanker flagged in Panama, weighing roughly 46,000 tons. But the Torin carries a dark history. She has been flagged for carrying sanctioned cargo in the past, and her insurance status remains highly questionable. Following closely behind her was the Guardian, a 31-year-old liquefied petroleum gas tanker flagged in Angola with a capacity of 79,000 cubic meters. The Guardian is deeply entrenched in what maritime experts refer to as the Dark Fleet, a shadow network of heavily sanctioned, often untraceable vessels. Joining the shadow parade was the Rain, a 25-year-old LPG tanker flagged in Guyana, another known entity within the Dark Fleet. Amidst this exodus of sanctioned vessels, one ship, the Magica 4, stood out. A 29-year-old bulk carrier flagged in Panama, the Magica 4 appeared to be a completely clean vessel, attempting an inbound voyage into the Persian Gulf. Trusting the words of President Trump, she was attempting to use the internationally approved channel, sailing directly into a rapidly closing trap. The illusion of an open strait violently shattered the morning of April 18th. At approximately 9:20 UTC, the United Kingdom's Maritime Trade Operations Office received a terrifying report. The master of a tanker had been approached by two IRGC gunboats. With no preliminary VHF radio challenge, the gunboats simply opened fire on the vessel, though thankfully, the crew and the ship were reported safe. The vessel under attack was the Sanmar Herald, an enormous Indian, very large crude carrier, 19 years old and displacing a staggering 309,000 tons. She had been heading outbound when the trap was sprung. The reality of the attack was cemented when maritime monitors like the crew at Tanker Trackers captured the desperate VHF, bridge-to-bridge radio communications from the Sanmar Herald. Over the crackling frequency, the captain could be heard pleading with the Iranian Navy. "You gave me clearance. You gave me clearance to go." This is motor vessel Sanmar Herald. You gave me clearance to go. Namia, my name is second on your list. You are firing now. Let me turn back. The violent encounter forced the massive Indian tanker to abandon her breakout, turning west and retreating back into the confines of the Persian Gulf, away from the deadly passage. As the Sanmar Herald retreated in defeat, a brief window seemed to open for the trapped passenger liners. 4 cruise ships, including the Celestial Journey, the sister ship to the vessel that initiated the run, along with the Mein Schiff 4 and Mein Schiff 5, made a desperate southbound dash and successfully exited the straits. But the violence was escalating rapidly behind them. By 11:25 UTC, the container ships that had been holding their breath, including the CGM Diamond and the Everglade, recognized the overwhelming danger, turned their massive hulls, and began heading back deeper into the Gulf. Their decision was immediately validated when the UKMTO reported another attack at 11:25. A container ship had been struck by an unknown projectile, causing damage to the cargo containers, though luckily avoiding a fire or an environmental disaster. Within just 2 hours of the gunfire directed at the Sanmar Herald, a second highly destructive strike had occurred against a commercial vessel, likely one of the CGM ships. Less than an hour later, at 12:08 UTC, the master of a fleeing cruise ship, potentially the MSC Eurybia or one of the Mein Schiff vessels, reported seeing a splash from a projectile in close proximity to their hull as they raced for the safety of the open ocean. The Iranian Navy's message was brutally clear. The Strait of Hormuz was shut once again. By the afternoon of April 18th, the aftermath of this chaotic breakout attempt was painted clearly on maritime tracking screens. Nearly every regular, fully insured, conventionally flagged vessel that had attempted to head outbound had turned around in defeat. The only ships that managed to punch through the gauntlet and secure a breakout were the aging, sanctioned tankers of the Dark Fleet. This created a highly unusual spike in vessel exits for April 18th, masking the deeper truth that legitimate global trade had been violently suppressed at one of the world's most critical junctures. The image left behind in the Strait of Hormuz was one of profound confusion and danger. Here at In Life, our goal is to sift through these conflicting narratives, matching raw, real-time evidence with the unfolding events so that you, the listener, can understand the true mechanics of our world. Because right now, in the waters of the Middle East, the situation remains completely, irreversibly batshit crazy.